There is a city in the deserts of southern Iraq that every ancient Sumerian text agrees was the absolute first city on Earth. Kingship descended from heaven at Eridu. Eridu was the foundational anchor of human civilization, and for over 150 years, Western archaeology has known exactly where it is. Cuneiform tablets visible on the surface of the sand. The last major excavation concluded in 1949. What those archaeologists uncovered should have shattered the mainstream historical timeline forever. 18 continuous layers of occupation. Each layer, a massive temple built on the ruins of the one before. An unbroken tradition spanning thousands of years. Look at the Sumerian texts. Enki built Eridu over the Abzu, a vast subterranean freshwater sea. The surveys confirmed it, not myth, fact. Eridu sits over a massive freshwater aquifer. The ancients knew what was beneath them and built the first city on top of it. They encoded geological reality into their creation texts. So what happened in 1949? Excavators reached Temple Level 1, recorded it, and then they just stopped. The site was closed. 75 years, left completely unstudied. Mainstream academics blame geopolitical conflict. But Eridu is in the far south of Iraq, nowhere near the primary war zones. The geopolitical excuse is a smokescreen. There is an unconscious preference distributed across global academic funding bodies to deliberately avoid finding out what is at the bottom of those 18 layers, because dating Temple Level 1 would obliterate the historical paradigm. And so, the oldest city on Earth sits in the desert. Texts from the world's first literate civilization are eroding in the open air because no one has come to collect them. What is waiting in the dark at Temple Level 1? What technology or physical evidence was left behind by the Anunnaki architects? What are they so terrified of us finding? Perhaps they already know that the civilization built over the Abzu didn't end naturally. It was exterminated. The physical proof is buried at Shuruppak. If Eridu was the beginning of the Anunnaki timeline, the city of Shuruppak was its violent end. According to the ancient texts, it was the final city of the Old World. In 1931, archaeologists began excavating Shuruppak to prove the legends of a great flood were nothing more than ancient poetry. But what they found beneath the sand broke the historical paradigm. They dug 45 feet straight down. 0 human remains. No pottery, no civilization. Just 45 straight feet of pure, unbroken flood sediment. This wasn't a local river overflowing its banks. A sediment layer of this magnitude requires an unimaginable volume of rushing water. It represents the instantaneous drowning of an entire continent. But the most terrifying discovery lay directly beneath the mud, the perfectly preserved, violently crushed ruins of the original city. The physical proof that the deluge was an absolute reality. The ancient texts, like the Epic of Atrahasis, document exactly why this happened. The human slave race had multiplied too quickly. The flood was an engineered extermination protocol. A targeted planetary reset designed to wipe the genetic slate clean and bury the original timeline under millions of tons of mud. The architects watched their creation drown. Geological models show that a catastrophe of this scale would have simultaneously breached the Persian Gulf and the Black Sea. An extinction-level event that rewrote the map. Yet mainstream academics continue to ignore 45 feet of physical silt, categorizing the deluge as a local river flood. They refuse to acknowledge the geology because of who survived. Warned by the rebel god Enki, the last king of Shuruppak, Zeusudra, survived inside a heavily engineered, bitumen-sealed craft. The bloodline of the gods was deliberately preserved. When the waters finally receded, the craft came to rest on the highest peak in the region. Mount Ararat. The old world was dead, buried under 45 feet of mud. It was time for the survivors to begin the Ararat rebirth. And they left a genetic trail of anomalies behind them. When the floodwaters receded, the surviving bloodline of the gods stepped out onto Mount Ararat, and they immediately began rebuilding the grid. Near Lake Van, the remnants of an impossible civilization. At sites like Kavas Tepe, we find megalithic architecture constructed entirely of basalt, one of the hardest volcanic rocks on Earth, fitted together with a precision that defies Bronze Age tools. Built directly on top of these godlike foundations are crude, primitive walls. Later generations simply found the ruins and built on top. Historians credit these later humans for the entire site. They also ignore the ruins of Kef Khaleesi, built perfectly out of the same basalt, completely submerged at the bottom of Lake Van. The lake was only low enough to build there 15,000 years ago. From this Ararat ground zero, the surviving architects dispersed across the globe to reseed civilization, and we can track their exact path through the bodies they left behind. Deep in the deserts of Paracas, Peru, researchers uncovered a massive graveyard of the ancient ruling class. 25% larger skull, not head binding, a different biology. Thousands of miles away, in the acoustic subterranean chambers of Malta, an identical cache of these massive, elongated skulls was found. Anomalies that standard evolution cannot explain. When independent scientists finally bypassed the academic blockade and ran full DNA sequencing on the Paracas skulls, the genetic markers did not match native South Americans. The mitochondrial DNA traced their maternal origins directly across the globe, explicitly bypassing the Bering Strait land bridge narrative. It traced them perfectly back to the Black Sea and the Lake Van region, the exact location where the survivors of the Great Flood landed, the exact location of the impossible basalt ruins. This is undeniable, hard genetic proof of a global ruling class. It proves a unified, advanced civilization rebuilt the world after the deluge, a truth the academic establishment is terrified to admit. But the architects did not rebuild in peace. The bloodline fractured into two warring factions, a war of ideology that would tear the ancient world apart and ultimately define modern human history. The War of the Gods. As the Anunnaki expanded across the globe, their ruling bloodline fractured into two diametrically opposed factions, the Eagle and the Serpent. These weren't religious archetypes. They were literal warring empires. The Eagle ruled through military discipline. The Serpent rebelled, pushing for consciousness and genetic ascension. This ideological split triggered an ancient, catastrophic civil war. The oldest written lament in history details how this war ended: the total annihilation of civilization. Mainstream historians write this off as a metaphor for military defeat. The text describes an evil wind that killed everything it touched, left bodies without wounds, and made the land uninhabitable. The text states the gods knew the wind was coming and they fled. For decades, this was considered pure mythology, until geologists analyzed the ruins of Tal el-Hammam, a massive Bronze Age city in the Jordan Valley. In 2021, a peer-reviewed paper in Nature uncovered the truth. Tal el-Hammam was destroyed by a Tunguska-scale airburst, massively larger than modern atomic weapons. 1,500 degrees, pottery vitrified into glass. Geologists found shocked quartz across the destruction layer, only produced by meteor impacts or nuclear testing. The blast vaporized the Dead Sea, throwing toxic salt across the landscape. The geology perfectly matches the ancient texts. The evil wind was the literal thermal pulse and pressure wave of an airburst. That is why there were no visible wounds on the dead. Mainstream academia ignores this. Geologists don't read Sumerian texts, and historians refuse to read geological data. This disciplinary siloing is exactly how the truth stays buried. The Akkadian era epic describes the god of war unleashing this event. Not a conquest, categorical, instantaneous annihilation, leaving absolutely nothing behind. Was Tal el-Hammam destroyed by a random cosmic meteor? Or did the Anunnaki detonate a catastrophic weapon during their civil war? A weapon that forced them to abandon the region entirely. With the old domain destroyed, the architects needed a new anchor. They needed to restabilize the energetic grid of the planet. They moved to Giza. With the old world devastated by war and the ancient Middle Eastern grid shattered, the Anunnaki architects needed a new anchor. They did not build tombs for dead pharaohs. They built an energetic master grid, and they placed it exactly on the 30th parallel. The same mathematical line anchoring the most powerful sacred sites on Earth. To guard this new grid, they recarved an ancient marker. Geologists have proven the Great Sphinx features heavy, vertical water erosion. Erosion needing millennia of rain Egypt hasn't seen since the Ice Age. Astronomical models confirm the Sphinx was a lion, designed to face Leo during the era of Zep-Tepi, the first time, over 38,000 years ago. The Great Pyramid is their ultimate technological signature, an impossibly precise machine built from granite blocks transported 500 miles. No mummies, no hieroglyphs, no soot from torches. It was built as a mathematical scale model of the Earth's hemisphere, perfectly balancing the energetic and magnetic frequencies of the planet. But the most terrifying anomaly of the Great Pyramid is its location. Mainstream academics tell us the builders were primitive humans. Yet, if you look at the exact geographic coordinates of the Great Pyramid's apex, they perfectly match the exact speed of light in a vacuum. A mathematical impossibility for a Copper Age society, a deliberate, unerasable signature left by the true architects of our world. They built the grid, they managed the resets, and they wrote our history. From the foundations of Eridu to the flood silt of Shuruppak, from the skulls of Paracas to the glass of Tal el-Hammam. The timeline is undeniable. We are trapped in a cycle of genetic engineering, manual labor, and catastrophic resets. Which leaves us with the ultimate forbidden questions. If our history is a manufactured lie, who are we really? Are we just a biological workforce waiting for the next reset? And looking at the absolute control of our modern world, did our creators really leave? Question the narrative. guard the truth.